Oakland-based writer Jeff Greenwald makes a living visiting other countries. KQED's Dave Iverson spoke with Jeff about his experiences.
Jeff Greenwald, you've made your living through your love of travel, including various travel writings, your books, Shopping for Buddhas and Size of the World. And now you've turned that love into a one-person show called Strange Travel Suggestions. How did that come about, that you would transform writing into performance?
Well, it came about 6 or 7 years ago. The Marsh Theater in San Francisco was putting on a series of travel monologues, and they asked if I'd like to come out in between the acts to read from my books. And I thought about it and I said, actually no. I would love to come onto the stage, but I'd like to do something that's more theatrical. And so the director, Stephanie Weisman, said, well, you can do that if you can think of something. So I spent a few weeks thinking about it, sat down with some friends and artists and other writers, and came up with this idea of telling travel stories based on the spin of a giant wheel.
Well, let's begin with that then, because you invite people up on stage and they spin a wheel, much like the Wheel of Fortune. What's the point of that? What's the idea behind that concept?
It's very much the Wheel of Fortune. It's the sense of how destiny impacts our travels. And the sort of the title for the show is Strange Travel Suggestions, which is taken from a wonderful line from Kurt Vonnegut's books Cat's Cradle, where he says, peculiar travel suggestions are dancing lessons from God. So there's this element of serendipity, of sort of kismet in our best travels. And I sort of wanted to, use the wheel to make that happen.
And where it stops is where you go in the show. And those stopping points are things like the kindness of strangers, or what else? What are some of the other points at which the wheel might stop?
It can stop at The Fool. It can stop at a place called The Map Is Not the Territory, Theater of the Absurd, The Ugly American, Meals of Misfortune. There's 30 stops altogether. And this was one of the big questions at the beginning. Are we going to make each of the stops on the wheel a specific story or a specific place? And what I decided to do was make each one kind of a theme. So for each place the wheel stops, there's 3 or 4 stories.
Well, let's see an example of one of these stories. This is the point where the wheel stops where? The example we're going to be is?
It's a stop called In a Dry, Dry Place.
In a dry, dry place. So this is a story, you're in Nepal, and you're riding on elephants. It's beautiful, blue sky sort of day, and then you enter into this sort of darker part of the jungle.
That's right.
And then let's pick up the story from there.
We came into this sort of dark part of the jungle, and suddenly it began raining. And this seemed completely strange. And I turned to Diane, who is a naturalist, and I said, I didn't know the jungle, had such strange microclimates in it. I mean, it was sunny back there, it's raining here. And then we just sort of look at ourselves and look at our clothes, and we see that the rain is actually bright, kind of almost fluorescent yellow. It's a fluorescent yellow rain, and Jitu, who's sitting in the front of the howdah, looks back and goes like, monkeys. And in fact, the jungle is full of monkeys who have all come together over the trail for their daily entertainment of peeing on the tourists.
An excerpt from Jeff Greenwald shows Strange Travel Suggestions. Strange, I guess, would be the underline there. But part of the point is to be available for surprise, right? Even a surprise you might not necessarily put in your itinerary.
That's right. And I think those of us who've traveled, I think everybody who's watching the show has probably done some traveling, probably realizes that it's those moments where we're kind of steered off our normal itinerary, where we wander away from the route that we had planned, and take up a strange suggestion. Either we've met somebody, or we see a little alleyway, or the sign of an intriguing cafe, and it turns out that that's really where we're meant to be, that there's a lesson in that place that turns out to be the point of our whole journey sometimes.
And is that what you want to encourage within your show, this kind of availability to be ready to be random and to become what you say is the difference between being a traveler and a tourist?
Yeah, that's really an interesting question, because I think these days, it seems to me that people used to travel in a sense, to see new cultures and to really experience other places, almost for a sense of remoteness from their normal lives. These days, people travel, they want to be connected. They want to stay connected through their computers and their networks to everything that's familiar. I just want to remind people of what an expansive experience travel can be and how it can really introduce you to things that are quite foreign to your normal experience and off your grid.
You also show during the show the tarot card of the Fool. And you like the metaphor of the fool, that we should be ready to be fools when we travel, because why? That we're ready to sort of step off the edge, that we're ready to take the proverbial leap of faith? That's
exactly it. The Fool, which is the central card of the tarot deck, is sort of this blithe youth who steps into the world and begins the journey through life as a leap of faith. And all great journeys, I believe, all of our greatest travels are really, they're not a planned itinerary as much as a leap of faith into the world to see what awaits us and in encounters and places we might find.
And last, how do you continue to engage the audience? Because travel stories, after all, when some people hear, oh, I'm going to go hear someone's travel stories, they go, ooh, where's the exit? I mean, how do you make that something that engages people and promotes the idea of being a traveler and not a tourist?
Well, I think that, first of all, having people come up and spin the wheel is really wonderful, and they're always rewarded with some chocolate or a yo-yo, so that gets them interested. Also, I just think that the nature of the stories, people can really identify. Often they're about my doing something foolish and being redeemed at the end of the story. And people can really put themselves in my position. And one of the fears I think a lot of people, maybe a lot of Americans in particular, have about travel is that they'll somehow appear foolish or be disliked. And I think it shows that even from the most dicey situation, you can find redemption and a great life lesson also.
To be ready to be a fool, be ready to be redeemed, be ready for strange travel suggestions. Jeff Greenwald, thanks very much.
Thank you.
And Strange Travel Suggestions continues at the Marsh Berkeley from February 10th through the 26th.